right, so get this. Today's deep dive, it's all about magic.
Ooh, magic.
Well, we're not talking, pulling rabbits out of hats or anything like that.
Ah,
You sent in a lecture by this guy, Bruce Kalver. And let me tell you, this guy's approach is different. It's personal stories, history, even a little bit of back and forth with the audience.
interesting. Yeah, Calver's background, it's really interesting. He's been doing magic for like almost 60 years, but he also has a theater degree. And get this, his grandfather actually worked with Houdini.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Oh,
no wonder he's like such a sought-after magic consultant for theater productions.
that's wild. I was reading about how he uses that theater background for
Yeah.
things like making snow fall only on one actor or creating like ghostly props as just coat hangers. But
Yeah.
there's also this story about a code his grandfather tried to teach him.
Ah, yes, the two-person code. Sounds like Calver was a, pretty typical kid, not exactly thrilled to be learning codes at the breakfast table.
Right.
But years later, he and his wife used it as part of their act on cruise ships. So
Mm-hmm.
talk about a lesson learned, right?
It's amazing how seemingly random knowledge can become, like, so valuable later on. And this code, it isn't just, some simple trick. It's actually complex enough to, like, secretly transmit the serial number of a bill.
It is surprisingly intricate. The way it works is the sender gives clues about each digit, like one at a time. Let's say the first digit is a 7. The sender might start by saying, "I'm getting the vibration of a high number," and the receiver would respond with either yes or right, depending on whether the number is odd or even. Then they'd narrow it down further, maybe saying it's a prime number. Okay. It takes real skill to do this smoothly in front of an audience.
And speaking of the audience, apparently in the lecture, Calver starts to teach the code,
Yeah.
but then realizes he needs a partner to really demonstrate it. Nobody in the audience knows it, except one guy who learned it from Calver at a convention years ago. What are the chances?
Wow. It's a perfect example of how Calver makes his lectures. So engaging. He's not just talking at the audience, he's creating an experience. And it makes you think about how even, simple codes can be so powerful, especially when combined with the art of performance.
It really does make you wonder how else you could apply a code like that in everyday situations.
Maybe.
Discreetly sharing information during a meeting, or even just as a fun mental exercise.
Absolutely. It sparks that curiosity. Now, shifting gears a bit, there is another part of the lecture that I found fascinating. Remember that smoke gimmick Calver talks about? The one he discovered at a magic convention in South Korea?
Oh, yeah. He was practically gushing about how excited he was to find it. Imagine being a magician, going to a convention, and stumbling upon a tool you've never seen before.
It speaks to that. Constant desire for innovation in magic, always looking for new ways to create illusions, surprise audiences.
So how does this smoke gimmick actually work?
It's a small, handheld device that can release a puff of smoke on command. Calver demonstrated it by hiding it behind a phone and pretending to check the battery. Suddenly, smoke. It looks like the phone is malfunctioning.
That's pretty clever. He's taking a common, everyday object
Mm,
and using it to create an illusion. I bet people wouldn't even suspect a thing.
exactly. And what's really interesting is how he plays on our expectations. We've all had phones act up, maybe even overheat. So when we see smoke, our brains automatically jump to a logical conclusion, even though it's all part of the trick.
So we've got secret codes and hidden smoke gadgets. What other tricks does Calver have up his sleeve? You mentioned he gives some tech recommendations in this lecture.
He does. And these aren't just for magicians. There are tools that anyone can use to enhance their creativity or just make life a little easier. The first one is the Photofunia website. It's a free website that lets you insert photos into all sorts of scenes and templates.
Okay, so how does a magician use that?
Well, Calver mentioned using it to place predictions onto billboards or even to make images that look like the entrance to a cemetery for a spooky routine.
Wow, the possibilities are pretty much endless. It's like Photoshop,
Yeah.
but way easier to use.
Exactly. And he even uses it for more practical things. He mentioned creating the spiral success visual that he incorporates into his growing and shrinking head illusion.
Hold on. Growing and shrinking head. That sounds both disturbing and amazing.
It's a classic illusion, and the spiral's a clever way to enhance the effect. He gives specific tips on how to use it. Stand 6 feet away from the audience. Spin it for 45 seconds. Then hold still for 10. Details matter. But moving on from visual illusions, Calver also recommends a tool that might not seem magical at first glance, the CZUR scanner.
A scanner? Okay. That doesn't sound very magical. But I'm intrigued. What's so special about this CZUR scanner?
Well, it's all about speed. It can digitize entire books in minutes, which is incredibly useful for magicians who need to, create props, research routines, or even just preserve old magic books. Kalver admitted to scanning a few himself. For reference only, of course. He's a big advocate for supporting magicians and creators by buying their work.
That makes sense. It's easy to get caught up in the convenience of technology and forget about the importance of support of the people who create the content we enjoy. It's a good reminder for all of us. But speaking of convenience, I read about one more tech recommendation. That really caught my eye. The Caesar Shine Ultra Shoe Polisher. Not exactly magic, but definitely practical.
Right, it's a little unexpected, but it shows how Kalver is. Thinking about the practical needs of his audience, a well-polished shoe can make a difference whether you're on stage or just heading into an important meeting.
It's those little details that can really boost your confidence. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about Calver's experience as a magic consultant for theater productions.
This is where his background in theater really shines. He shared some amazing anecdotes in the lecture that demonstrate his creativity and problem-solving skills, like the time he had to teach a handsome, alluring Jack the Ripper how to perform magic tricks.
Wait, what? A magic-wielding Jack the Ripper?
Hmm.
That's a character I wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley. What kind of tricks did he teach him?
Apparently, they kept it fairly simple. Tricks like an electric deck and a color-changing scarf. But the real standout was a modified zombie trick that they taught a zombie actor to perform.
So, there were zombies in this play too.
Yes, it was quite the production. They even incorporated the trick into the set design, having the zombie float one of the pawnbroker's balls. It's a fantastic example of how Kalver seamlessly blends magic into the world of theater.
He also mentioned creating a snow effect. That fell on one actor, but not another. That sounds incredibly challenging. How did he pull that off?
This was for a production of Picasso at the Lapin Agile, a play that features characters like Picasso, Einstein, and Elvis. The director wanted snow to fall on one specific actor during a scene in the Lapin Agile, a Parisian bar.
So, how do you make snowfall on cue and only on one person?
They rigged a box above the stage, filled with heavy confetti, made from white cardstock. When they pulled a cord, the box opened, and the confetti fell straight down onto the designated actor. It was simple, but effective.
It's amazing how he uses his understanding of physics and stagecraft to create these illusions. And it's not always high-tech solutions either. He mentioned working on a ghost-themed musical with a tight budget and ended up using wire coat hangers to make props jiggle like they were being moved by ghosts.
It's a testament to his resourcefulness. He doesn't let limitations stifle his creativity. He finds ways to work within them.
Just a great lesson for anyone, really. Sometimes the most creative solutions come from embracing constraints. But speaking of creative approaches, Kalver introduced a concept called the Aristotle Triangle for analyzing magic routines. Have you heard of this?
Yes, and I think it's a brilliant framework. He suggests that every magic routine should be evaluated based on three principles: ethos, logos, and pathos.
Those terms are familiar from rhetoric, but how do they apply to magic?
It's fascinating how he connects those concepts. Ethos is about credibility. Does the magician come across as knowledgeable and trustworthy? Logos refers to logic. Does the routine make sense? And does the flow feel natural? Pathos focuses on emotional impact. How does the audience feel after witnessing the magic?
That's actually a very insightful way to think about magic. It goes beyond the mechanics of the trick and focuses on the overall impact on the audience. And it's not just for magic either, I was thinking. You could apply this triangle to any form of communication, from a presentation at work to a conversation with a friend.
Absolutely. If we think about how to establish our credibility, use logic effectively, and connect with people on an emotional level, we can become more effective communicators in all aspects of our lives.
It's like Kalver is giving us a secret weapon for better communication, disguised as a magic lecture. And speaking of lectures, there's one more thing that struck me as unique about Kalver's approach. He delivers the entire lecture sitting at his computer.
It's definitely unconventional, but it allows him to seamlessly showcase products, websites, and even interact with the audience through a chat box. It feels more personal and engaging than a traditional lecture.
It's almost as if we're getting a glimpse into his virtual magic workshop. And, it makes me think about how technology can actually enhance communication, even in a field like magic that's often associated with traditional performance.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we can use technology to create more intimate and interactive experiences. And the way Kalver uses it, it feels like he's having a conversation with the audience, not just lecturing at them.
That conversational style, Definitely comes across in the lecture. He even jokes about his wife's reaction to his tech recommendations, saying she probably hates the person who writes the tech column because she ends up buying everything he reviews.
It's those little moments of humor that make him so relatable. You can tell he's genuinely passionate about magic and about sharing his knowledge with others.
It's contagious, isn't it? His enthusiasm makes you want to dive in and explore these ideas further.
It does, and it reminds us that learning should be enjoyable. When we're curious and engaged, we retain information better and are more likely to apply it in meaningful ways.
So, we've talked about secret codes, smoke gimmicks, tech recommendations, the Aristotle triangle. It's like Kalver has given us a whole toolkit for approaching magic and communication in new ways.
He has, and it makes me think about the different ways we can all approach learning and innovation. Sometimes we discover something completely new, like that smoke gimmick Kalver found in South Korea. Other times, we find new applications for existing knowledge, like using the Photofunia website for magic.
And sometimes, we're reminded of the value of timeless principles, like the Aristotle triangle, which has been relevant for centuries.
Exactly. It's all about staying curious, exploring different perspectives, and being open to new possibilities. And, thinking back to that two-person code, I can't help but wonder how our listener might use it in their own life.
It's a great question. Imagine using it to communicate discreetly in a meeting, to share a secret message with a friend, or even as a fun way to test your memory and communication skills with your partner.
Exactly. It adds a bit of intrigue and fun to everyday situations, and it makes you appreciate the power of subtle communication, how much we can convey without actually saying a word.
It's like a secret language, just waiting to be unlocked. But before we get too carried away with code breaking, there's one more thing I want to highlight about Calver's lecture. It struck me that the lecture itself, it's a performance. He weaves in humor, audience interaction, personal stories. He's not just delivering information. He's entertaining and engaging the audience.
That's a really astute observation, and it reinforces that idea of ethos. He's building credibility and connection, not just presenting facts. Think about how he talked about his wife's reaction to all his new gadgets.
Yeah, he was joking about how she must hate whoever writes the tech column because she ends up buying everything.
Exactly. Little glimpses like that make him so relatable.
Yeah.
And it makes the learning process so much more enjoyable. You can tell he genuinely loves what he does. And that passion, it shines through.
It's inspiring, actually. It makes you realize that learning, it shouldn't be a chore. When we're curious and having fun, the information sticks with us.
Absolutely. It's like Kalver's, inviting us to play along, to explore the world of magic with him. And in doing so, we might discover something about ourselves, about how we think and communicate.
So we've gone from secret codes and smoke-filled phones to the psychology of illusion and the art of performance. It's amazing how much we've unpacked from just one lecture.
It's a testament to the power of deep dives. We take something that might seem ordinary on the surface, a lecture, an article, a news story, and we find the extraordinary threads hidden within it.
And those threads, they can lead us to all sorts of unexpected places. Maybe we learn a new skill, or gain a fresh perspective, or simply rediscover the joy of learning something new.
And that's what makes this so rewarding. Each deep dive, it's a unique journey, tailored to the individual and their interests. There's always something more to discover, something fascinating to explore.
As we wrap up our exploration of Bruce Calver's world, I'm left with this lingering question. How can we take what we've learned and apply it to our own lives? Whether it's exploring new technologies, rethinking how we communicate, or just embracing that sense of playful curiosity.
It's a challenge to take those insights about ethos, logos, pathos, about the power of storytelling and presentation, and apply them to our own work, our own conversations.
But it's a challenge worth taking on, because who knows, maybe we'll unlock a bit of magic in our own lives along the way. Until next time, keep those minds curious, and remember, there's always something extraordinary waiting to be discovered.